All right, today we are jumping into this really fascinating book called The Framework, and it tackles one of those big fundamental questions that I think we all wrestle with. I mean, have you ever wondered about this? Why is it that some things in life, businesses, relationships, even just our own personal habits, they just click, they flourish? And then other things, no matter how hard we try, how much effort we pour in, they just seem to collapse. Well, that's the big mystery we're going to unpack today. And to get us started, the book kicks off with this brilliant story that just perfectly sets the stage for its core idea. So picture this. It's 2019. You're at LEGO headquarters in Copenhagen, and they have a huge problem. They need this massive, incredibly detailed model of the Sydney Opera House. And when I say massive, I mean 65,000 individual pieces. But here's the kicker. There's no instruction manual. Zero. It's never been built at this scale before. So what do? Well, you call in the expert. They bring in this guy, Ryan McNaught, who is one of only 21 LEGO certified professionals on the entire planet. And his task is just monumental. He's got to build this thing, make it structurally perfect, strong enough to go on a global tour, all with no blueprint. I mean, can you imagine the pressure? So the big question is, how on earth did he pull it off? When people asked him, how did you know where every single one of those 65,000 pieces went? His answer was, well, it was profound. He said he wasn't forcing the bricks together. Instead, he understood their inherent design logic. He could just see how they were meant to connect. He wasn't fighting the pieces, he was aligning with their design. And this right here, this is where the book makes its first really big leap. It asks, what if this isn't just some cool Lego trick? What if this principle of inherent design applies to, well, everything? To our relationships, our work, our societies? What if everything has a specific way it's designed to function for the best results? Okay, so let's dig into that, because the book argues this isn't just some abstract analogy. This pattern of inherent design has literally transformed the modern world, and one of the most powerful examples of this comes from the world of manufacturing. Let's travel back in time to Nagoya, Japan in 1950. The Toyota factory is in a full-blown crisis. You've got these incredibly dedicated workers, brilliant engineers. Everyone is working as hard as they possibly can. But the cars coming off the line, they're a mess. The quality is totally unpredictable. So despite all this maximum effort, the company is literally on the brink of failure. And then, this American statistician, W. Edwards Deming, comes along and introduces this totally radical shift in thinking. He basically tells them, stop trying to work harder. Stop trying to force quality by just inspecting for mistakes at the end of the line. He says, instead, you have to build quality into the process from the very beginning. You have to align with the design specifications at every single step. And bam, this just perfectly illustrates the book's core idea. It's not about more effort, it's about better alignment. And the results? I mean, they were absolutely staggering. The defect rate just plummeted. Production doubled with the same number of people. Toyota became the global gold standard for reliability. But here's the craziest part, the real key. The workers were actually less stressed, not more. They weren't working harder. They were working smarter in alignment with a better design. It was all about less friction and way better results. Okay, so we've seen this in Legos, we've seen it in car manufacturing. Now, this is where the book takes this incredibly powerful principle of alignment and applies it to a concept that's, well, it's very old and very, very misunderstood. The author argues that we've been looking at the idea of righteousness completely backwards. You and I, we tend to think of it as a moral thing, right? Like being a good person. But the book asks, what if it's not a moral term at all? What if it's actually an engineering term? See, the original Hebrew word tzedakah, it actually describes structural integrity. Think of a wall that's perfectly straight, or a system that's functioning exactly as it was designed. It's all about being in proper alignment. And when you reframe it like that, everything changes. The old view of morality feels like a bunch of restrictive rules you have to follow, right? It's an obligation. But viewing righteousness as architecture? Well, that's totally different. It's not about restriction, it's a revelation. It's not an obligation, it's the underlying structure. It's not about just behavior, it's about the design itself. It's a blueprint for how things are supposed to work. Okay, so this all leads to a really big question, doesn't it? If righteousness is all about aligning with the design, then where do we find the design specifications? Where's the manual? Well, according to the author, we've actually had access to the operating manual this whole time. The book makes the case that the Hebrew word Torah, which we almost always translate as the law, is much better understood as the instruction. So it's not just a list of restrictive, arbitrary rules from on high. Think of it more like a manufacturer's technical manual, but for reality itself. It's the operating specs for human flourishing. And if the Torah is the instruction manual, that totally changes how we see the concept of sin, too. The original Hebrew word for sin, hatah, is actually an archery term. It literally means to miss the mark. So again, it's not about being a morally bad person. It's a technical term. It means you're operating outside of the design specs. And when you do that, you get a predictable result: system malfunction. And what's really fascinating is how the book then connects these ancient specifications to all sorts of modern scientific and sociological discoveries. I mean, look at this. Ancient scripture says forgive, and modern science shows forgiveness literally improves your mental and physical health. It talks about a day of rest, and we now know rhythmic rest is critical for our brains. It's uncanny. The argument is that these ancient principles work and lead to better outcomes precisely because they're aligned with our fundamental design as humans. So after all this amazing theory, you might be thinking, okay, this is cool, but how can I actually test this out? How do I see if it works in my own life? Well, the book doesn't just leave you hanging. It ends with a really simple, practical experiment you can try. It's called the friction audit, and it's super straightforward. First step, just identify one area in your life that has consistent friction. You know, that place where you feel like you're putting in a ton of effort, but getting very little back. Maybe it's a relationship or a project at work. Step 2, search for the design principle. Look at people who are succeeding in that area. What are they doing? What seems to be the underlying principle that works? Step 3, for just 24 hours, that's it. Consciously try to operate according to that principle instead of your old habit. And finally, step 4, just observe. Just notice. Does the friction go down? Do the results get any better? And that brings us to the final powerful question that the book leaves you with. It kind of reframes your entire approach to every problem you face. What if the greatest struggles in your life aren't a failure of effort, but a failure of alignment? What if the answer isn't always to just try harder, but to step back, find the right blueprint, and simply align with it? It's a really fascinating idea to chew on.